ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard Captain Fi, the Financial Independence Podcast. G'day! Welcome to an episode of Captain Fi, the Financial Independence Podcast, where I open the cockpit to some of the best and brightest in personal finance, as well as those who've reached or are on their way to financial independence. Before we get started today, remember anything on the show is provided for general information only and should not be taken as constituting professional advice. You should always do your own research when making any financial decision. An important lesson all of us pilots learn in ground school is the value of having an experienced flying instructor. They guide, shape, and mentor us as we learn to fly, build our confidence, and eventually go solo. Even once we gain our wings, we still check back in regularly for ongoing advice and training. Well, similarly, a financial advisor or financial planner is a professional who can help you learn to manage your finances like a pro. They can also help with estate planning and overall financial strategies. They should work with you to comprehensively determine your personal financial situation, needs, challenges, behaviours, and future goals, as well as regularly check back in with you to make sure you are on track. Financial advisors actually have to deal with some pretty impressive and ever-increasing levels of regulation. They are bound in Australia by a legal obligation to act in your best interests. Having said that, they are not all the same. There are still some massive sharks in the industry, as well as terrible financial products out there that you should be aware of and probably want to avoid. So, do I have a financial advisor? Do you even need one to reach financial independence? And what are some of the common pitfalls when it comes to choosing one? Well, I managed to track down an experienced not-for-profit financial advisor for a bit of a Q&A, and I got to ask some pointed questions on this topic. Dee is a not-for-profit financial advisor with over a decade of industry experience. She has had over 7 years of tertiary study behind her, having earned not only a degree in finance, but multiple financial advisor qualifications, including a diploma, advanced diploma, and certification in financial planning, amongst many, many more industry-specific, technical, and regulatory qualifications. Dee made a deliberate pivot away from a higher workload and higher stress job, shifting into the not-for-profit sector to help her design a more sustainable lifestyle. She now mainly works with women and families to help get them back on track and reach their financial goals, whether that is paying off debt, buying a family home, building wealth, or even literally just keeping their heads above water. Dee's partner also works in the not-for-profit field, and together they are raising their family and investing their way towards FIRE. Now, Dee is no stranger to hard work. She was initially earning $3 an hour in her family's fish shop and went on to be the very first in her family to graduate university, and she even did so debt-free. She now balances her life-changing work with ongoing professional development and, of course, being a mum to 2 young children. Without further ado, let's get into it and unpack everything you need to know about financial advisors. All right, morning Dee, how you going?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problems. I hear it's been a bit of a rough night and morning with the kids, but you've got a coffee with you, so it should make for a fun recording.
Yes, that's right. Hopefully it kicks in pretty soon.
Don't worry, I've got my cup of tea here. I'm personally trying to wean myself a bit off the caffeine because I get a bit jittery, but no, I'm definitely craving one as well.
Sure.
So, Dee, can you give us a bit of a background on yourself?
Yes, I'm the voice behind Budget Boss Baby's Instagram account, and I'm a financial planner. I've been a financial planner for 8 years and working in the financial services industry for 11 years now. So pretty much my whole professional career has been in financial services. I'm in my early 30s. I'm married. I've got two children. So they're quite young still, a 3-year-old and a 10-month, or nearly 11-month-old. So about my background, I'm from a big fat Greek family, not quite as big as your family by the sounds of it, but I'm the eldest of 5 children. And my family are a family of fishmongers and have been business owners my entire life. Both my parents never went to school or never finished high school, I should say. So they dropped out in grade 9 and grade 10. You know, they never sat me down to show me how to budget or how to invest. We often spoke about business, economic topics around the dinner table every night, which was pretty cool. The biggest thing I guess I learnt from them is that you don't need to have all these degrees and qualifications to be successful in life. You can, work hard, and as long as you love what you do and are passionate about it, then you can, be successful.
I love that you've had exposure, I guess, to the business side of house from a young age, and I think that's probably been a really powerful influence on you and how you have become so successful in the financial industry.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also really helped me relate to a lot of clients I've dealt with in the past, because I have dealt with a lot of small business owners as well. So having that background has been very, beneficial. And yeah, I guess the work ethic I've been taught. So my first job was working in one of the seafood businesses when I was 11, and I was earning $3 an hour, and I'd work 30 hours between a Friday night and a Sunday every weekend. And so I didn't really, hang out with friends a lot on the weekends, and didn't go to a lot of parties and things like that in high school. So yeah, I had a bit of a different upbringing from that perspective.
Wow. Now, Dee, I have a bit of a confession to make.
Yes.
I am possibly Australia's worst fisherman.
Okay.
So, so these days, I actually don't even put a hook on the line. I just tie a sinker to my
Yeah,
line and I whiz that out because I know I'm not going to catch anything anyway.
that's hilarious.
Oh gosh, no, wow! It sounds like you've worked incredibly hard. Like cafes and restaurants, especially family owned, can
Mm.
be really tricky. I know my family's previously run small cafes and fish and chip shops,
Mm.
and my parents or my mum worked in a chicken shop, and she certainly tells me how hard it was, and getting paid $3 an hour. Gosh.
That was just when I was 11. It obviously increased as I got older and learnt to negotiate with my father, who is that's probably the hardest negotiation you'll ever have to do, is with your own parents.
Absolutely, absolutely, because the dad's the one that's usually teaching you how to do the
Yeah,
negotiation.
yeah.
So then to turn it around, but good on you for turning it around back on him. That's fantastic.
Yeah. No, there was a lot of positives. Like, I mean, when I bought my first car when I was 16, I was able to buy that with cash, which not many 16-year-olds would be able to do. Unfortunately, I, bought a new car because I didn't know any different really then, and I do not recommend a 16-year-old who's learning to drive to have a new car.
Oh, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, yeah. And then other, I guess, things that I'm quite proud of from those earlier years is when I did go to universities. I was, I think, the first in my broader family to go to university. So when I did that, I paid for my university up front. So I've never had any help or HEX debt. So
Wow.
I was, yeah, quite proud of that, and I didn't realize what a big deal that is until my later years.
Congratulations, see that is a huge achievement, especially to be sort of pioneering the way in your family as well, and to
Yeah.
walk away with 0 HECS debt. That's incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
I haven't really had a lot to do with the financial planning industry. I have gone on occasion and spoken to, I guess, a financial advisor or a financial planner. Can you tell us a little bit about the difference between a financial advisor and a financial planner and what they can do for their clients?
Sure. So the term financial planner and financial advisor are actually the same. They're interchangeable in Australia. Whereas I think in America, there's potentially some differences, but in Australia, it's the same thing. Um, Financial coaching, though, so you might hear about money coaches or something with the name, yeah, coach in it is different. So financial advisors and financial planners, to use that title, you need to have certain qualifications. In the past, you didn't have, there was no real sort of benchmark in terms of qualifications, but that's all changed recently. So there's now minimum degrees and exams and things like that we need to have passed to be able to use that term. Whereas a financial coach doesn't have to have any qualifications, but they're really limited on what they can talk about. So they can really only talk about, budgeting and that kind of stuff. Whereas a financial planner, effectively, they can talk about anything and everything to do with financial advice. So what a financial planner does, I guess as an overall summary, they help clients set goals and then work on achieving those goals by making a plan. And the goals can be financial or non-financial or lifestyle goals as well, because often those lifestyle goals will still need some sort of financial backing to be able to achieve those. So that's sort of a summary of, I guess, what we do. And we can typically give advice around anything from cash flow and budgeting, investing, debt management, insurance, superannuation and retirement planning, estate planning, just to name a few topics.
Wow, so the full spectrum.
Yeah.
I'm interested, Dee, when I went through engineering school and when I went through pilot school, a lot of the stuff I got taught was very different to what I ended up doing in the job. How have you found, I guess, the training or the qualifications to become a financial planner compared to what you're actually doing day to day?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. In saying that, I did a degree in finance, not financial planning, because when I was at university, a decade ago, they didn't have financial planning as a degree where I went. And so what I studied finance would be more appropriate if you were to go be a fund manager, for example. So when I started to work in financial planning, it was more like that personal finance rather than that institutional finance. So it was very different.
Well, that sounds like you've got a fantastic background for actually investing and understanding how the stock market and assets work, which is exactly what I would want from my financial advisor.
Yeah, so you definitely learn a lot about the theoretical stuff at university, but I think knowing that stuff, like how, theory works, is very different to when you're actually advising somebody in person, because yes, you do need to know about maths and know about formulas and, all that kind of technical stuff. But when you're advising someone, you're advising a human, and there's actually a lot of emotion and, behavioral finance behind that. And so I think a good financial planner needs to have a good mix between those interpersonal skills as well as that technical background, because there's no point being knowing all that information if you don't know how to simplify it and communicate that to somebody and give them the why does it matter, because if they don't realize why that matters to their situation, they're not going to care.
You always got to start with the why. There's a really good book, I think Simon Sinek, and
Mm-hmm.
the book's called start with why?
I mean, even yesterday I saw somebody, and unfortunately, so she's in her 60s. Unfortunately, she had switched her superannuation investments to cash in March this year, March 2020, during the COVID crash. And she now realizes that was a mistake, that she got so spooked and switched it, and she wanted to, change her investments. But I really had to try and pull her back from that and say, well, we need to look at, what are your goals, what are your objectives, because there's no point taking on more risk than necessary to achieve our goals. And we need to consider the broader circumstances, not just your superannuation investments. We need to look at the overall strategy before we start recommending where to invest it. So it really is looking at that bigger picture, the goals, objectives, and when we are giving financial advice, it's actually a bit of a process to do that. So the first phase of financial advice involves like a discovery phase, where we need to know about somebody's overall starting position. So what is their income? What is their expenses? What are their assets? What are their liabilities? As well as those goals and objectives. So really knowing that starting position, and working out those goals and objectives. And sometimes somebody won't know what their goals are, and it's sort of our job as financial planners to help refine that with the client, and often we'll go through different exercises. So on my Instagram, I've posted before about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I sometimes go through an exercise with somebody around that to help them identify what their, bigger goals are in life. And then as a financial planner, we'll go away, research, what their current products are, what are some alternatives. We'll put together a financial plan, and then we'll present that and implement it, and then have ongoing reviews at least annually to make sure that initial plan still makes sense, because things can change in terms of legislation, investment markets. Things can change personally as well. So income might have changed. They might be taking a work break. They might have, had another child. Like, anything can change. And so that's why it is really important to regularly review those financial plans as well.
Okay, so it's almost like an ongoing health check, or I guess you'd call it a wealth check.
Yeah, I like that.
So, Dee, how do you actually track down a financial advisor?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways. I guess it depends on the type of advice needed. So you could initially go to your superannuation fund. Sometimes they'll have advisors there. Now, most superannuation funds will have an intra-fund financial advice offering, which means they can really only give limited advice on kind of superannuation and those type of investments, maybe insurance in that super, that kind of thing. But usually that is a very, cost-effective way to get advice initially on that sort of area. But if you're wanting somebody who can give you advice on your overall situation, which is usually what I would recommend, because something you might think you only want advice on one area, but you don't know what you don't know until you speak to someone who's kind of qualified to bring up different areas of your situation. So you can find financial advisors through the Financial Planning Association of Australia, or the FPA, or you can find them through the Association of Financial Advisors, which is the AFA. So they are two industry bodies in the financial planning industry. And so I'm a member of the FPA. I'm a certified financial planner, a CFP. We've got lots of acronyms in our industry. There's the FPA has an app where you can put your information in, and kind of like a Tinder for financial advice is the best way I describe it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so you can actually put in there that you're looking for advice, and you can be matched with some advisors that might meet your needs in terms of your age or what you're looking for advice on. So I can give you details to put in the show notes or something like that.
Yeah, that'll be great. I'll I'll put links to both of those two professional bodies.
Yeah.
Now, I'm pretty lazy, and so often I just find myself typing things into Google.
Yes.
Can you see any issues if people just type in, financial advisor near me or anything like that?
No, so I was going to also say that another great way to find a financial advisor is to have a talk to your friends and family, because often if you've got friends, you're probably in a similar life stage or got similar goals or interests. So if they've got somebody that they're speaking with, that they may be a match for you as well. So that could be another option to get that personal referral. And in terms of Google, no problems with doing that. I guess the thing with doing a financial planner near me search, though, is a lot of financial planners can advise Australia wide now with virtual meetings. So you actually don't need to see someone face to face anymore. But I guess that's going to come down to your personal preference in terms of communication methods. We can certainly do a whiteboard set up over the internet these days as well, and have video cameras and all of that sort of stuff. Whatever you do, though, however you find a financial advisor, you always should check that they are licensed to give financial advice. And the way you can check that is by going through ASIC's financial advisor register. So ASIC is a regulator for financial services, and you can basically put in the financial advisor's name into the register, and it will come up with their qualifications, their experience, if they've had any breaches or complaints against the advisor. So it will give you all that information, and you just want to make sure that obviously you're getting advice from someone who is qualified to do that.
Wow, that's a fantastic service. I wasn't aware of that, and I'll again link to that in the show notes. But how's that for a motivation to keep you guys on the straight and narrow?
Yeah, absolutely.
So once we've found a financial advisor, what kind of questions should we be asking to figure out if they're right for us?
Yeah, good question. I think you can ask the financial advisor about their experience and about their qualifications. I think that's always just a good starting point, so you can see how they hold themselves and how they communicate, and maybe also asking about who their typical client is, to see if that you would, suit that advisor style, I guess, because there are some advisors that might focus on millennials, whereas others might focus on retirees. There could be some advisors that focus on high net wealth people, and then there could be advisors that focus on, more everyday people and have more of a coaching approach in terms of, budgeting and cash flow and those sorts of topics.
Can we ask the financial advisor what they do personally with their money? Is that legit?
Yeah, I actually wrote that down as something to bring up. I do think people want to ask how the advisor invests and manage their money. So, I'm always pretty open about my situation, but I don't always think that it really helps the client, because what I do is based on my circumstances and my needs and my goals and objectives, and that might not meet the client's objectives. So, I'll be very
Yeah.
open about it, but it's not a one size fits all. And, we often have very different needs from that perspective. And the way I always like to think of it is that you can be a surgeon and not have had a knee operation before. So, so you don't have to actually be doing the same things as the client to be able to advise on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Wow, that's a really good analogy, Dee. I guess it's probably a bit cheeky asking that, but it's a perfect example of how, personal advice really is personal, and general advice is general.
And I've written down a few other points just to raise as well around questions to ask a financial advisor. So, something that a lot of people may not be aware of is that financial advisors, so they're obviously licensed to give advice, and they will have what's called an approved product list. And so what that means is their licensee will give them a list of products that they can recommend without having to, do really extensive research, because we use those products all the time. So, for example, my approved product list has about 30 different superannuation funds on there. It's got a list of retail insurers, got investment bonds, it's got investments outside of superannuation. So it's got, index funds, actively managed funds, direct equity. So there's a whole range of things on my approved product list. But you could be meeting with somebody who, you might want to just find out what's on their approved product list in terms of not the specific products, but like the types of products. So they might not have any, as an example, retail insurance on there, which means like they're not typically giving advice on those sorts of areas, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does. That definitely makes sense.
Other areas to maybe question the advisor on is how they get paid. So, are they a self-employed advisor, or are they employed by a company? So do they make a profit from the fee that they're charging, or do they get a salary? Do they get bonuses, commissions from insurance products? Commissions on investments have been banned for a long time now, but there's still commissions on insurance. So yeah, just finding out about how they get paid. I think that's also worthwhile, just to understand their position in the relationship. And also just asking about things like not only the upfront advice, but I think a lot of people don't think to ask about ongoing advice. So I mentioned that it is really important to review your situation at least annually. A lot of people don't think to ask, well, what's that going to cost on an ongoing basis? Is it just a once-off fee at that point too? Or is it, do you pay throughout the year? Or, yeah, there's just different ways that you can get paid and pay an advisor. And there's no one way to do it. There's actually lots of different structures. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's just important to understand that.
Okay, so I guess just on that approved product list,
Mm-hmm.
and as you mentioned about the payment structure, I guess
Mm.
that segues perfectly into my next question, which was, what are the typical fee structures for a financial advisor?
There isn't, unfortunately, one way of doing it. There are some advisors that may charge you a percentage-based fee based on, funds that they're managing for you. There might be just a fixed fee for the advice. So again, the way I've always worked, I've never accepted a commission in my life, in my 8 years of planning experience. And I've only ever charged a fee for service. That fee will typically depend on the complexity of the advice that I'm giving. And yeah, I guess it really depends on, is the advisor giving you holistic advice where it's generally more fee for service, or if they're focusing more on the investments, which sometimes is more a percentage based fee, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because it means that their interest is aligned with yours. So they'll get paid more if they make you more money. But the portfolio goes down, they'll have a reduced fee as well. But it does mean that as your wealth is increasing, you're potentially paying more fees for the advice. And I do think the industry is moving more towards that fee for service side of things.
I've always said try and find a fee for service provider.
Yeah, but I guess to be fully transparent though, you could be an advisor that charges a fee for service, but that amount is going to differ, as I mentioned, depending on if it's a very simple situation versus something that's a bit more complex. And it also will depend on, is the advisor self-employed and therefore making a profit, or in my situation, I actually work for a company that's not for profit. So we're more of a cost recovery in terms of the advice fees that we charge, which is quite unique in the industry. So it's always going to depend on different factors in terms of how much the fee is, and if the advisor is self-licensed and independent versus if they're employed by a company, and there could be what's perceived as um, like a conflict almost, like another interest involved. So yeah, it's just being aware of those different factors.
Okay, so those are some great questions to ask. The next one I was going to ask, and I guess this is quite related to what you just said, but how do we know that a financial planner is actually acting in our best interests?
Yeah, I guess I have started touching on that. I think in the past it was definitely more of a concern around not knowing whether an advisor was acting in your interest or if they were more of a salesperson trying to get a commission kind of thing. But I think the industry is, really tidying itself up and moving to be more towards a profession like a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, and especially with those minimum educational requirements and certain exams that need to be passed and things like that. And also with the fee structure being, no investment commissions, and even the insurance commissions have reduced substantially as well to prevent conflict from that point of view. So I think moving forward, there'll be less concern around that that area. Um, how can we know that an advisor is working in our best interest? Well, first of all, it's actually legislation now. So we have a code of ethics, and we can't actually act for a client if there is a conflict of interest. So in the past, an advisor could still act for somebody if there was a conflict, as long as they disclosed it. But these days, you can't just disclose and disclaim that conflict away. You just simply cannot give advice to that person. So I think things have changed there.
That's very reassuring. And so how is it regulated? You mentioned a few professional bodies earlier, and also ASIC, but what happens if a financial advisor does break the conflict of interest?
Yeah, so well, there's, as I mentioned, the licensee. So we're licensed to give advice, and there needs to be the person that's holding the license is often doing um, audits on your files to determine that. And they'll often get legal advice externally to give opinions on that too. So there's that. There's ASIC, as I mentioned earlier. There's actually a lot of different bodies that regulate the financial services industry. So there's APRA, there's the ATO, there's things like AUSTRAC. So we've got anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism acts that we need to abide by, which means we need to identify somebody and understand where their wealth has come from, and it's not, dodgy money effectively. So we've
Yeah.
actually got lots of different regulators. That's just some of them. There's a lot more as well, and there's lots of different legislation we need to follow, including the Corporations Act, the Superannuation Industry Supervisions Act, the Privacy Act, Tax Agent Services Act. So yeah, again, lots of different legislation. And to be honest, if I was to go back and do my time again, I would probably go and study law before I became a financial advisor, because I think that would have been very beneficial in this industry.
Wow, it's certainly taking me back to my days of doing air law, aviation, trying to get my head through all the different regulations.
Oh
Um,
wow! I didn't
it's
even know that was a thing.
yeah, it's just the rules, but
mm,
it doesn't sound anywhere near as complicated as what you have had to put up with. Okay, so you've got quite a lot of legal regulations, auditing, and external, I guess, supervision
yes,
of your
and
position, as well as if you muck up, you're going to be publicly named and shamed on the ASIC website.
absolutely. And I am subscribed to a number of different finance websites. Like they send you updates throughout the day, and we as financial planners regularly are notified when certain advisors are given a black cross against their name. So it's, sent out to everybody. You can't hide.
You get ostracized from the group.
Yes, that's right. Um,
So,
I was
D,
just,
it sounds
yeah, sorry.
I'll say, D, it sounds a little bit stressful. I have to ask, have you enjoyed your career as a financial advisor?
Yeah, I have. There's definitely been ups and downs, just like with any job and any career, I think. Um, but overall, I have really enjoyed it. The things that I've really enjoyed are that I feel like I am making a difference in people's lives. It's a real privilege to be invited into somebody's life and find out about, their biggest dreams and desires, which can sometimes be scary to admit to the world, but then also to find out about those skeletons in the closet and those confessions. Yeah, it's a big privilege for somebody to trust you with that sort of information and to help them get on the right path. The biggest compliment I get is when a client says they wish they saw me 5 or 10 years earlier, and I get that, quite regularly, that compliment. Yeah, the more people I can reach and help, the more fulfilling I think my life will be. But yeah, there have definitely been some lower moments in my career as well. Having to help people through really traumatic life events such as, illness and death, that can be quite hard for me to deal with sometimes because I am quite an emotional person. So, yeah, somehow I managed to keep it quite professional, but then I'll go home and cry to my husband later that night. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of changes in this industry, and hopefully we'll be able to say it's a profession quite soon. But I've always tried to be the most like qualified I can be. And every time when I think I'm finished my study and I'm at the top of my game, there's a change in legislation and it means I need to do more study or do another exam. That's been an ongoing thing for the last 10 years, I guess. So, yeah, definitely been some more stressful times, but overall have really loved what I do, which is why I started my Instagram account.
Lifelong learning,
Yeah.
very similar in aviation. Never a dull moment, and always striving to become better and better. So that's awesome. I think that's been a really great breakdown about financial advisors, and I mean it's been quite valuable for me to listen to that, and I'm sure the listeners will have gotten quite a bit of value out of that. I want to kind of change the tune of our interview today and just ask you a few more personal questions about your individual journey, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, I'm pretty much an open book around how I do things, so that's fine.
What has your journey towards financial independence been like?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, when I went to university, it was really more like corporate institutional type finance rather than personal finance I studied. So, just like anybody else, I've really learnt about that personal finance kind of on the job. Well, not like everybody else, but as I've gotten older, I've learnt more things, and then obviously that was quite accelerated because of my day job. So it was quite slow to start with. As I mentioned, there were some silly things I've done in the past, such as buying my first car being brand new. So that was quite silly. But yeah, as time has gone on, really built momentum in terms of growing, my net wealth and things like that. And even with transitional phases such as taking career breaks for children and having the added expense of children, I feel like things are really, I guess, snowballing is the term they like to use in the personal finance community. Yeah, so slow to start with, just like how most people probably feel, but then it does accelerate as time goes on. Just like anybody else, I think that it was, slow to start with, but then as time goes on, it really accelerates and grows.
How do you and your partner manage your finances in the household? Do you have you got it combined? Do you use a trust, or how do you sort it?
Yeah, so my situation is a bit more complex to the average person because both my husband and myself are in high risk occupations in terms of we both give advice. So we do have a family trust and we try not to have any assets in our own name for that protection. Um, but yeah, we do joint have joint money. So I think we'd always kind of joined our finances, but we still had our pays going into separate bank accounts in the earlier years. So I've been with my husband for 11 years now. So those earlier years when we first started to live together, we still had our own like bank accounts and money going into it, and then we kind of just joined some money into a joint account. But when I was having children and going on career breaks, I didn't get any paid leave from any employers. So I really had no income for a few months at a time. And so I do find that I actually just don't know how people would manage their situations if they were in that situation, if they had no income and they had separate finances to their partner. So I think in some degree it is good to kind of join in some ways. Yeah, so we join our money. We have most of our assets in a family trust. As a result, we will probably pay more fees in terms of setups and management, and probably more tax in our lifetime because of the way it's structured, but it is for that asset protection.
That's quite a valuable tool to have, or structure to have, particularly for high risk occupations like yourself, advisors, lawyers, surgeons, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what I'm learning is that, for the majority of people, a trust could be an unnecessarily expensive structure to have.
Yes.
But hey, Dee, how awesome if you are off work on leave, to use the family trust to, say, distribute to yourself when you're not earning as much. So can potentially have some upsides as well.
Yeah, definitely. There can be some benefits. You just need to make sure that obviously the benefits are going to outweigh the costs.
That's the that's the $6,000 question, isn't it?
Yeah.
You always need to do the business case analysis.
That's it.
All right. So another question I've been itching to ask you: what is your investing style, and how does your family invest their money?
Yeah, so we use a core satellite investment approach. So the core part of our investment portfolio is index and active funds, and we do predominantly invest in an investment bond. So again, it's for that making sure we don't have assets in our own name. And I know investment bonds can be a bit more expensive in some cases, but when I did the analysis, because we invest every fortnight when we get paid, it actually works out to be more beneficial for us to have that investment bond than paying brokerage each transaction each fortnight. I really need to structure things that way because just like everybody else, my husband and I have different spending and saving styles and different investment styles. So it really works for us to make sure that when we get paid, the money is out and invested and gone, so my husband can't see it. And the investment bond is also really good because my husband knows that's a 10-year time frame. We can't touch that for 10 years. So yeah, we also do have some individual shares outside of our index and active funds, and that's more for, I guess, personal interest and fun. In terms of other investments, we don't have an investment property. I've had one in the past. It's not my cup of tea. I just am, we're both just too busy to be having that to worry about as well. But yeah, never know what will happen in the future. But at the moment, we purely invest in, basically shares, Australian and international shares in that core satellite dial.
I don't personally know a lot about the investment bonds. I am learning a bit more about them at the moment, and I'm hoping to actually write something up about my experience and see whether it's something I'm going to jump into. But yeah, it's always interesting to see how people's investing strategies deviate. I guess it comes back to, it sounds like you and your husband both really love your jobs. Working for a not-for-profit, it sounds like, you kind of are almost living your financial independence dream now. I know a lot of people in the industry are, very heavy on building a portfolio of index funds in a brokerage account and then quitting their job. But
Yes.
It kind of sounds like that's not the path you're taking.
Yeah, 100%. My husband actually works for a not-for-profit as well, which I forgot to mention earlier. So we really do love what we do, and we can't ever see ourselves retiring. And I do hope that I'll be able to continue giving financial advice until I die, basically. And so I guess, taking this job, I've only been here for about 18 months now. Previous to that, I was working for a boutique financial planning firm who self-licensed and independent, dealt with mainly high net wealth people. And it was a very stressful job, and I did long hours. And I tried to go back to that job after I had my first child, and I tried different ways of working. So I tried to work part-time, and I tried different hours, and I tried all sorts of things, but it just the reality was I had changed as a person, and so that no longer aligned to my personal goals and objectives. So that's why I had left and am now working for a not-for-profit, which does align more to my values.
That's awesome. And I know a lot of people who are listening to this are doing so because they, in some way or another, are not really where they want to be in life. And financial independence gives an incredible amount of power and freedom and choice back to us. So it's awesome to hear that you're exactly where you want to be.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, just like everybody else, my husband and I have always wanted to make sure that we're in a position, and we are in a position that if we wanted to take a few years off work or cut back on work, we could. And so the role I'm in now is incredibly flexible. And I'm often posting on Instagram like it's the middle of the day and I'm at the gym because I'm in between client meetings, and things like that. It's just I've really, yeah, it's definitely been a better fit for me, especially. And I started this role actually when I was a couple of months pregnant with my second baby. And I had people telling me that wasn't the right career move to be moving into this role. But I just knew from a family perspective, it was going to be a lot less stressful, and I'd be a lot happier in it. And yeah, I do not regret my decision one bit.
Flexibility and a happy work environment are massive.
Definitely.
So, D, just on that, how has being a parent changed your approach to money and finance?
Yeah, it's changed a number of different ways. I think, well, from a practical point of view, we're probably spending less money now in terms of like lifestyle stuff, because the way we socialize is very different now to when we were dinks, double income, no kids. Um, so, a lot more of our social life is around, going to the park and picnics rather than going to try the latest restaurants. So that's quite different. We've also got, I think, a lot more goals around volunteer and charitable giving. So, for example, both my husband and I mentor university students. We want to be able to help those next generations, I guess. Um, find something they're passionate about. So that's quite changed, and we've got, from the charitable side of things, we've got a sponsor child for my son, and we plan on sponsoring another child for my daughter with the Smith family. Yeah, I think that's really special because we give and receive letters from our sponsor child, and I think it's important that my children grow up realizing how privileged they are and put some perspective back into their lives. So that's been really important for us since having children. And yeah, as I mentioned, like we've got that stronger desire to reach financial independence, so that, as I mentioned, if we needed to take some time off work because, one of the kids is sick or going through a hard time emotionally or mentally, we can. And it's really important to us that we do significantly cut back on work when our kids are in high school, because they may not think that they'll need us around, but they will emotionally, I think, because it's quite a tough time in anybody's life, I think, going through high school, and that, you're really growing into yourself. So that's why I guess we've got that desire to work really hard now, so that by the time high school comes around, we're, yeah, really cruising. The other way things have changed is, it's not, it is I guess, kind of money related, but we are a lot more focused on sustainability. And so we're more willing to pay for things that are Australian made or more sustainable for the long term. Yes, it might cost us more, but there's no point having money if there's no world around in the future.
So having children has really given you an even longer term focus or outlook in life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no point building that generational wealth for our kids if there's no planet.
Yeah, it's a big issue. It's a big issue,
Yeah.
and even there's I'm looking into things like ethical ETFs,
Yes.
and I'm looking at things like ethical use of super. So maybe that's something we can discuss down the track if we can get those added to your approved product lists.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, the company I work for does have a strong ESG focus, which is really great. And it is actually a legal requirement that financial planners do ask if there is any ESG or personal ethical preferences that the client has to take into account with the investment recommendations. Um, so, yeah, I think that's quite different this year to previous years that we actually have that legal obligation to ask that now.
It's quite interesting, even just talking to you today, Dee. I used to think financial advisors were kind of cowboys out in the wild, wild west. But I'm slowly starting to come around to see that, they probably do have an important place for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our superannuation industry alone is growing at an crazy rate. So financial advisors are extremely important because just even with superannuation, things are so complex there. The rules are quite hard to understand unless you're doing that every day. And yeah, I do hear that comment a lot where people think that financial advisors are cowboys, but I like to think of myself as the new breed of financial advisor. So I am really focused on rebranding our industry into a profession and changing that perception.
You said you've got two young children at the
Mm.
moment. Now, being someone who's quite financially savvy, and I know you've touched on this on your Instagram, but how can parents with young children particularly work around childcare benefits?
Yeah, childcare is it needs a real overhaul of the system. Um, Yeah, unfortunately, there's no real way of minimizing childcare fees because you can't like salary sacrifice your way out of it or anything. It is income tested, and they'll add back things like property losses and salary sacrifice and those types of things into the calculation. But I guess the biggest things to think about with childcare is that it is a family expense. It's not the woman's expense or the mum's expense. So it should be taken into account from both salaries, not just, mum's salary. So I think
Yeah.
that's really important. And also, I am really passionate about women having their own money. So even if it's just one day a week of work, I think it's really important. You never know when something might happen to your partner and they might not be around anymore. And if you've taken years out of the workforce because of a cost like childcare, it could be very difficult to get back in later on if your skills aren't kept up to date. Even things like if a woman is working part time, the research says that they're less likely to be promoted and less likely to continue on that trajectory with their career. It's taking into account those sort of future benefits, as well as things like, the superannuation benefits, which is obviously a big one too. Women are currently retiring with about half the amount of superannuation as men. Just thinking about also that social aspect as well and the mental health aspect. So being a stay-at-home mum is incredibly hard, and I take my hat off to any parent that does that. Staying at home and just talking to kids all day, yeah, it's tough work. And also, I think, from the child's perspective, childcare offers such fantastic benefits from a child's social learning. So I absolutely love childcare, and I hate the fees as high as they are. But in saying that, I also think childcare workers do not get paid enough for what they do, and I do hope that the system can be overhauled and perhaps we can have more of a not-for-profit system with childcare so that the workers can get paid better, but then also parents are able to continue working.
If you had children and you're looking into childcare for the first time, where would you suggest parents go for more information?
Okay. um, on Services Australia, which is the old, it's Centrelink's website. It's called Services Australia now. There's information about the childcare subsidy, and so you can learn about that. But it is, yeah, very difficult to understand sometimes those websites. If there's any sort of mums groups that you're part of on Facebook or anything like that, that's a good place as well to ask questions and get information from other parents. But yeah, there's actually no, again, one, because it's income tested, it depends on the type of childcare. There's lots of different things that will factor into how the fees are charged and how much you'll pay. So it's, yeah, no one size fits all again, unfortunately.
Is that something that a financial advisor would be able to advise on?
Yes and no. I find that the financial advisors that do know anything about it are parents themselves. So it's more from a personal learning experience. And, it'd be very difficult to, I guess, charge somebody for advice on that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not really something a financial advisor would typically advise on. And so, yeah, it might be better off just trying to learn yourself, unfortunately. And it is really just a minefield.
Yeah, okay. Well, good luck to any new parents out there. You heard it straight from a financial advisor. Jump online, try and get into the mums groups, and find out any way you can. All right, one more question
Yep.
about financial advice stuff. What is your take on private versus public health insurance in Australia, and which one do you go with and
Yeah,
why?
this is an interesting one. We've talked about this before privately. I've been exposed to both systems in my time, both personally and from my broader family situation. I think we're incredibly lucky in Australia to have the public system that we do have. However, after experiencing things myself, because I can afford to, I won't ever be without private health cover. Um, so I've had a child both through public and private systems. And, I've also had a family member initially for mental health reasons be put into a public psychiatric ward in a hospital. And then we moved them into a private facility. And again, based on that experience, yeah, I would never want to be without private health. And I guess the system is designed that way, that the whole purpose of the Medicare levy surcharge is that those that can afford to buy private health should be doing that because it's taking the pressure off the public system. So that's what it's designed for. And yeah, that's why I would always have private health.
Okay, and just to unpack that a little bit more,
Mm,
now I did write an article on this a while ago, and by the way, thank you so much for your help with that.
that's
Speaking to
okay.
you was really useful in actually understanding how that all works. Now I've got private health insurance through my work as well, and this is always something that I've just struggled with whether I was going to pay for that myself should I ever leave, full time flying work,
Yes.
or whether I should just stay with the public system. I've got a big family, and there isn't really a lot of wealth in my family. So we've got a lot of experience in the public system, which, I'll admit hasn't been the best, but it has been pretty good. A lot of my nieces and nephews successfully delivered through the public system, but I feel like I definitely don't know enough. So I'm always wanting to pick the brains of anyone I can when it comes to this topic. Could you perhaps explain a little bit more about I guess, the Medicare levy surcharge and the implications of not going for private health insurance when you could afford it?
Yeah. So if you earn as a single person above a certain amount, about 90,000, or I think it's 180,000 as a family, and there's different tiered amounts. So if you earn between that and a different amount, you get charged one fee or one extra tax, I should say, one extra Medicare levy surcharge, and if you earn above a different amount, it's a different surcharge. So it's different amounts, but basically, if you don't have private health and you're considered a sort of a higher income earner, the ATO the Australian Tax Office will tax you an extra amount. And so it's designed to encourage you to go buy private health. And sometimes the private health may end up being cheaper than the Medicare levy surcharge, or it might be the same, or it might be more expensive. It really depends on the type of cover you have. And I think just like any other insurance, it's about weighing up the risk of something happening and claiming it versus paying the premiums. So it's just like being totally and permanently disabled, for example. What's the risk of me claiming on that versus the premium that I could just pay now to cover me for that risk? And the same with the private health. I might never ever need to worry about putting any of my family members into a private psychiatric clinic, but it's around having that peace of mind to know that if something does happen, I've got that cover so I can give them the best treatment that I can.
Okay, so it all comes down to really your personal circumstance. And again, no one size fits all. All depends
Yes.
on your level of comfort, again, your level of income. And so is this something a financial advisor can help you through?
Yeah, typically, a lot of financial advisors aren't qualified to talk about private health insurance, and so where I have found it helpful, because yeah, I haven't even really learned about this in my studies. The way I've learned about private health again is personal experience, and also speaking to companies like iSelect and Compare the Market as a starting point to get some information and learn more about those different products. Obviously reading the product disclosure statement, which can be quite boring for some people, but that's how I've really learned about private health myself, as well as that personal experience.
So there you go. Maybe something to be said for picking a financial advisor with a little bit more life experience behind them.
Yeah, definitely. And with private health insurance, just like any other insurance, it's going to depend on where you live as well as to what the premiums might be. So they're different for every state and region, just like your car insurance. So yeah, there is no one size fits all, unfortunately.
Just like we've been saying this whole
The whole
whole
time.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, it's been awesome chatting to you today, Dee. I just want to finish up with the two questions that I ask absolutely everyone. So the second last question is if you could give three recommendations for some of your favorite personal finance, investing, or self-development books, blogs, or podcasts, what would be the best three that you've found?
Ooh, only three.
See, I'm cruel. I'm cruel.
Yeah.
You
Okay. A book that I discovered this year, which I absolutely loved, is called The Life Plan by Shana Kennedy. And it is, I think, perfect for the fire community because it really helps you design a life that you want to live based on your values, and it helps you identify the clutter in your life and the stuff that doesn't give you value, and ways to manage that, and just effectively how to build your dream life. So really recommend that one from sort of a self-development perspective. Okay, so I'll pick one for sort of the working mum, since that's really, I guess, my target area. I think a great book that again I read this year was called The Mother of All Jobs by Christine Armstrong. And in this book, it is a series of, I guess, case studies around working mums and working parents. And I think even dads should read this book too. And yeah, a series of case studies around different life stages of the child. So from birth to preschool and childcare to high school and then past high school. And it has some really good information and tips. And effectively, the outcome of that book, I don't know if I should give the spoiler alert, but effectively, the way our system is set up is so that only one parent works and the other one is either stay at home or works part-time. So I guess it's really reassuring to read that book and know as a parent, you're not failing, the system is failing you because it's not set up for both parents to work and succeed in their careers. So I think that's an excellent book for the working parents. And to give a finance one, I really enjoy My Millennial Money podcast by Glenn James. He does a lot of strategy topics as well as, touching a little bit on investing as well. But I have really enjoyed that one and got my husband onto that because I think it's really helped him. Sometimes taking advice from somebody, you kind of don't want them just telling you what to do. So it's been really great for our relationship for him to learn things himself and then come to me when he wants to, talk about a topic a little bit more. So just like everybody else's relationships, we've got, barriers around, personal finance too. So that's been really helpful.
Fantastic recommendations, Dee. I actually recently discovered the My Millennial Money podcast as well, and I think it's fantastic. He's also got some pretty cool stuff online as well.
Yes.
And it's really funny you mentioned that. In a previous relationship, I had that same barrier when it comes to personal finance. But thankfully, She's on the Money podcast was a great way for my ex to get into personal finance. So there you go. So you've got My Millennial Money where you can send your husband to, and you've got She's on the Money to send your missus.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's another good one as well. She's on the Money. Yep.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so now comes the cruel question. If you could summarize into 3 pieces of advice, your top tips for someone on the path to financial independence, what would you say to them?
Yeah. So number 1 is spend less than what you earn. It's not rocket science, but unfortunately it's easy to happen, with marketing and consumerism and all that stuff these days. But yeah, spend less than what you earn. Number 2 would be to invest in yourself. So both from an educational point of view and also a health point of view. And I think my last point would be that once you have, built your foundations and established yourself in terms of your career and your lifestyle assets, try to avoid that lifestyle creep of buying a bigger house and a newer car, which is often what happens as people earn more money or grow their family. So really just try and focus on growing those investable assets to help you be able to have that freedom, which is what we're all trying to get.
That's awesome. And just on that last one, you've kind of done the opposite of lifestyle creep, haven't you? You started out with the new car and you've become progressively more humble.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, awesome. Hey, Dee, it's been absolutely awesome chatting to you today. Thanks so much for making time out of your busy schedule. For listeners wanting to track you down and find more about you, what's the best place for them to get in touch?
Yeah, I've really only got my Instagram account, Budget Boss Babies, that I'm on. And I am pretty much anonymous because, well, semi-anonymous these days. You all know I'm nicknamed D now, and I'll occasionally show my face on there. But I do have to keep it pretty anonymous due to my day job and employment contract and licensing arrangements. So, yeah, I've pretty much only got that Instagram account these days.
Well, no worries. If anyone wants to follow you on Instagram, I'll leave a link to your Instagram account in the show notes, and I'll also be tagging you in the post about this episode. Again, Dee, I totally understand the need for an anonymity, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I'm in a very similar boat, so I totally respect that. And if anyone wants to come and follow you, hopefully they can do so on your channel.
Thank you.
No worries. See you, Dee. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Captain Fi Financial Independence Podcast. To read the transcripts or check out the show notes, head over to www.captainfi.com for all the details. If you have a question for the captain, make sure to get in touch. You might even make it on the airwaves. You can reach me online through the Captain Fi contact form or get in touch through the socials. I'm active on Facebook and Instagram, as well as a number of online finance and investing forums. And finally, remember, the information presented on the show and the links provided are for general information purposes only. They should not be taken as constituting professional financial advice. You should always do your own research when making any financial decisions and make sure it's appropriate for your personal circumstance.